What's going on, guys? My name is Matt, and today we're looking at a handheld gaming PC equipped with a Ryzen 7 CPU that's not only smaller than a regular Switch, but actually has a very similar footprint to a Switch Lite. This is the Neo Air Pro, and on paper it looks like it could be one of the best handheld gaming PCs on the market, but as we all know, specs don't tell the whole story, so today I'm going to be unboxing and testing out this tiny handheld to let you know whether or not it's worth it in my opinion. The Neo Air starts at about $550 and goes all the way up to about $1,000 for the Pro model with a Ryzen 7 and 16 gigs of RAM, which is the model we'll be looking at today. This is a fully fledged Windows computer capable of playing tons of PC games along with emulating most consoles, including the aforementioned Switch. Opening up the box, we find a segmented interior with some text saying "Real gamers, no gamers," whatever that means. Pulling off this top part, along with the quick start guide, we find the accessories at the bottom and the device itself at the top. In terms of accessories, you get a USB-C charging brick, a few different power converters, a USB-C cable, and a couple USB-C to A converters. Next, I picked up the device itself, and upon first holding it, I started to really get my hopes up. This thing seemed almost impossibly small. The ergonomics felt good, and all the materials also felt surprisingly nice. Turning it on for the first time, I was greeted by the amazing 1080p OLED display that is both a gift and a curse, which we'll talk about more what I mean by that in a minute. I went through the setup process of Windows using only the touchscreen, which was a little annoying but totally doable, and was then brought into Windows where I could start downloading games to test out. In terms of specs, again, this is kind of crazy. It has a Ryzen 7 5825U with 8 cores, 16 threads, and a max boost clock of 4.5 GHz. That's right, there's an 8-core CPU in this tiny handheld. Along with these CPU cores come 8 GPU cores running at 2000 MHz. This config also features 16 gigs of RAM and a 1TB NVMe SSD. The screen is 5.5 inches, and like I said before, it's a 1080p OLED panel, colors are bright and vibrant, viewing angles are incredible, and overall it's one of, if not the best display on a handheld that I've ever experienced. The buttons and D-pad both feel very nice, and the joysticks are Hall effect, meaning you shouldn't experience any drift. You get an assortment of multimedia and function buttons, with even the edge banding near the shoulder buttons being pressable. There are dual USB-C ports, a fingerprint reader power button, expandable microSD storage, and a 3.5mm headphone jack. The shell is made of a nice soft touch plastic, with the Hall effect triggers being a semi-glossy plastic. It feels really nice in the hands, and at about 440 grams it's not too heavy, being about 10% heavier than a standard Switch. The normal non-Pro model is thinner and lighter, but even the Pro model we're looking at here really isn't heavy, and for comparison the Steam Deck weighs about 50% more at around 670 grams. In terms of features, this really checks pretty much every box, but what's it like to actually use and how does it perform? In terms of PC gaming, performance honestly isn't really where I think it should be at this price point. I released a performance and settings guide for a bunch of games, and their numbers seem pretty in line with what I was getting. Stuff like Borderlands 3 is sort of playable, but only at 720p low settings, with the frame rate dipping to below 30 in far too many instances. Far Cry 6 sees an average in the mid-30s with adequate 1% lows. The big surprise for me was Cyberpunk, which again was playable at 720p low with an average in the low 30s, but it was surprisingly smooth and stable. If you're cool playing a game like this with controller inputs, I think this works shockingly well. Many of the better performing games are ones that you probably don't want to be playing on a handheld like this. Stuff like Apex Legends, Rainbow Six, Overwatch, and other esports games where you really need a keyboard and mouse to be competitive. Which you totally can hook up a keyboard, mouse, and display to this, but at that point a gaming laptop may just be a better solution. Beyond this not so great performance, running this 1080p display at 720p can sometimes result in weird resolution scaling effects. It's nothing major, but something to keep in mind. In terms of emulation performance, I was most interested in how well it could run Switch games, as I knew older consoles would be easy to run on this. I tested both Mario Odyssey and Pokemon Legends Arceus. Both ran on this device, but in both games the FPS was well below 30, and calling the experience playable would be generous. I didn't take a ton of time to optimize settings and everything, so I may be doing something wrong, but if you are interested more in the emulation performance of the Neo Air, I would recommend checking out this deep dive on Taki Udon's channel, which will be linked below. This device is able to keep pretty cool, but under full tilt the fans do get a little loud, which on like a train, plane, or bus shouldn't be an issue, but if you're trying to use it in a quiet room with someone else, it might be a little annoying. In terms of battery, this is another area where the Aya Neo struggles a bit. I found under full tilt you can only really get a solid hour of playtime. Adjusting the power usage is an option, but this can hurt performance in many titles. The more I used and gamed on this device, the more I started to question who this is really meant for. Many of the games that perform well and make some sense to play on this device can already be played on the Nintendo Switch, and in instances of more competitive titles like Overwatch, I'd much rather be pitted up against controller players than have to play against people on keyboard and mouse when I'm stuck on controller. With all that being said, there's still one thing to keep in mind. This is a fully fledged Windows computer. On its own, navigating and using the UI is a bit cumbersome, but hooking it up to a monitor, keyboard, and mouse gives you a great desktop Windows experience. And with an 8-core Ryzen CPU, you can actually do a ton of productivity stuff with even many workstation applications being totally usable. This flexibility really helps Aya position a device like this as more than just a console, and I think is the reason why someone might pick this over something like a Nintendo Switch. I still think a gaming laptop is probably better for a lot, if not most people, but I can still see instances where having an ultra compact gaming handheld that can also be used for productivity does make sense. If you're in the market for a Windows handheld gaming console and don't care about size, then going for a Steam Deck over this makes a lot of sense in my opinion. With that being said, being basically pocketable may be super appealing to many who just want to play their Windows indie games on the train ride to work. Overall, I think this device is really cool. Flawed, yes, but the amount of power and features Aya was able to squeeze in such a small device is nothing short of incredible. So do I recommend it? This is a tough one. On one hand, I think most people are better off with something like a Steam Deck or even just a standard gaming laptop. With that being said, I do think there is a subset of people who this device will fit their needs perfectly. Am I one of those people? I don't think so honestly, but I do believe they're out there. Originally, I thought this device would allow me to leave my Switch at home while I travel and give me the flexibility to play both PC and console games on the go, but with the lackluster battery life and underwhelming PC gaming performance, I don't think that will be happening anytime soon. But I'm interested to hear what you guys think of this device in the comments below. Do you think it's a viable Steam Deck alternative or just a gimmick we should ignore? So yeah guys, I think this wraps this video up. If you're interested in handheld gaming PCs, a few years back I actually built my own DIY version and I'll link that video in the description if you're interested. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. And as always, this is Matt from Tech by Matt, signing out.